All right. Bruchim Babayim. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Kehilat Derech HaYashar's teaching portion of our services today. I'm glad you all are here. If I could speak this morning, that would be a lot better. I'm glad you all are here. Those who are here physically, those who are here online. I'm so thankful that you've chosen to join us this morning. Since the COVID-19 epidemic, it seems like everybody and their brother has gone online with their services. So you have lots of people to choose from. But if you're here today joining us, we just want you to know how much we appreciate the fact that you take the time to come here to learn with us as we are going through the Torah portions every week. But not only that, we try to incorporate the Ketuvim, the writings, as well as the Nevi'im, the prophets, and ultimately the words of our Mashiach in the Brit Chadashah, or if you don't know that term, it is the New Testament. So, without any further ado, let us do our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us by your commandments and commanded us to make your Torah our business. Amen. All right, this week we are in Parashat Emor. Parashat Emor. It's from Leviticus 21 all the way through Leviticus 24. And Leviticus 21:1 says this. And the Lord said to Moses, say to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them. So the usual formula that we see in the Torah, whenever it is that Hashem speaks to Moses, is the term Vayidaber, right? Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe Lemor. And God spoke to Moses saying, speak. And then Bnei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel. And that word, Vayidaber, it comes from the Hebrew word or Hebrew root known as Devar. You can see it right in the very beginning. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe Lemor. Deber el kol adat Bnei Yisrael. Speak to the Marta Elohim Kedoshim Techiv Kiddush. Okay, so it's the word Devar. However, I think I may have put the wrong Hebrew in here. I was looking at it this morning. Let me double check that just to make sure. The Hebrew in. Okay. Yeah, that's not what Leviticus 21:1 says. I don't know how I ended up with that. It says, Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe Lemor. However, Leviticus 21 actually says, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe Emor. So I don't have the right verse in there in the Hebrew. So please excuse me for that, because if it actually says Vayidaber, it completely defeats my entire purpose for teaching what I'm teaching. Okay, so it doesn't say that. It says Vayomer Adonai el Moshe Lemor. It doesn't have the word Vayidaber in there. So I was trying to make a distinction. Vayidaber is the word Devar. However, this passage here actually uses a different word, Vayomer. So it's not the same formula that God normally uses when he's speaking to Moses and telling him to speak to the children. He's actually speaking to the priests in this passage. Say to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them. So the Hebrew again, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe Lemor. It's a different formula than what God normally uses when he's talking to Moses. And this word Emor, Vayomer, comes from the word Amor, which comes from the Hebrew word Amar. And Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch defines this word Amar as to organize speech to be heard and understood. Okay? Organized speech to be heard and understood. It's one thing to speak to someone or to communicate something to someone, but it's something else entirely to speak and to be understood. This is a big issue. It's a big issue. It's one thing to just throw something at somebody. It's something else to be heard and understood. In Hebrew, the word daber. I'll go back because I have this misplaced Hebrew verse in here so we can actually see it. The very first word over on the right-hand side at the top, vayidaber. You see the dalet, the bet, and the resh. Daber. The daber it means hard speech. It means difficult, hard speech. And how do we know this? Because the word daber has two very hard letters in it. The dalet and the bet. It's a dental and a labial, which means it's you d and b, d, but they're hard letters. So therefore, the sages looked at the word daber as a type of hard speech. It's a straightforward, objective expression of a message to be conveyed, emphasizing the accuracy and the precision of the content and nothing more. I'm just speaking because I am relaying information to you without any concept of the person in which it's being spoken to. It's just I'm giving information, however it's delivered. On the other hand, the word emor, and you can see it, Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, this word here has an aleph and a mem and a resh. An aleph, mem, and a resh is known as soft speech. It is soft speech. It is a subjective tailoring of the message reflecting the full consciousness of its intended recipient to facilitate effective communication. Okay, let me say that again. It's a subjective tailoring of the message reflecting the full consciousness of its intended recipient to facilitate effective communication. And you're saying, well, that's hard speech. Can you break that down for me so that I can understand it? Know who you're talking to. Relate to the person that you're talking to. If the person you're talking to doesn't get a lot of technical language, then don't use a lot of technical language. Tailor the message in such a way that the person's receiving is able to digest it. Instead of throwing out a very difficult, hard to comprehend thing, and I've been instructed over the years that maybe sometimes I'm a little technical. I throw out a lot of hard language, a lot of technical terms, things like that. And I've been very gently reminded to say, not everyone understands things the same way you do. So bring it down to a level in which other people can then easily digest it. And you know what? I get it. I understand. But when you're dealing with on the internet or you're dealing with a large crowd of people, then you have this mix and find a middle of the road. Don't speak on a college level, but don't speak on a kindergarten level either. Because if you speak on a kindergarten level, you're going to bore the people who have a college degree. You speak on a college degree, those who didn't finish high school are going to have a hard time listening to what you're having to say. So it's a matter of soft speech, subjecting the people to a message in which they can digest. Again, this word emor has soft letters. It has an aleph and it has a mem. Aleph is ah, mem is soft letters. So the word emor then is considered to be a soft type of speech. So we're all called to be educators on one level or another. Okay, we all have a sphere of influence in which we teach people, we instruct people, whatever level that might be. And even though this particular portion is directed specifically to the priests, we are all called to be a holy nation and a kingdom of priests. So on some level, we are going to be hakohanim. We're going to be priests because we have a responsibility to bring God's word to those who are around us. The implication is that education in all of its contexts must be carried out primarily with soft speech. All of it should come out with soft speech. To be effective educators must fully empathize with their hearers and tailor their delivery style accordingly to whomever it is we're talking. To whomever it is we're talking, we need to deliver it in such a way in which they can receive it. I learned a new word this week. The new word is the word pedant, or pedant, a pedant, a pedant. What is a pedant, you might ask? I thought you might ask me that. A pedant is a person who is excessively concerned with formalism, accuracy, and precision, or one who makes an ostentatious and arrogant show of learning. So, this is someone who refuses to get down on anybody else's level so that they can communicate on a way that will be effective, that reaches, that touches somebody's heart, that actually affects a change in the person, right? Because ultimately, whenever we're a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, our goal is to make an effect in the world. I have known people in my lifetime to be so harsh in the way that they deal and instruct and tell people that whatever message they have to relay, gets completely and totally blocked out based on the delivery. The way that it's given, the way it's delivered, the person can't receive it. It could be the greatest message a person could give to another human being that will tremendously help their life. But because of the delivery, they couldn't hear it. They couldn't hear it. And so there's a lot of people in this world that could learn this lesson from Emor. When God speaks to Moses, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe. When God spoke to Moses to say to the priest, he gave him a soft message. He says you need to speak to the priests in a way that they can understand. Why? Because we read from the Haftarah portion this week in Ezekiel 44 that they were going to be the teachers that teach the people the difference between holy and unholy, between common and clean. And if you can't teach that and relate that in such a way to people that they can understand it, you've done a great disservice. And I've known it. I've seen people just completely turn away from the faith because of the way they were treated by another human being. And this ought not to be the case. We should be as a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, a light that draws people in, not turns them away. So a person who is a pedant is a person who speaks to others criticizingly and is laden with impatience. They can't seem to communicate without somehow or another getting to a place in which the message is not heard. Pirkei Avot 2:6, it tells us a short-tempered person cannot teach. A short-tempered person cannot teach. The Talmud tells us a story about a particular rabbi in a school who had one student who had to be taught his lessons 400 times every day because he couldn't seem to get it the first time. So the rabbi taught him his lessons 400 times every day so that he could get it. And the rabbi was patient with it. But one day, the rabbi got an urgent message that he needed to leave. He taught that child his lesson 400 times and the child still didn't get it. So what did he do? He put off whatever emergency he had to do and taught this child another 400 times just so he would be able to get the lesson. This teaches us that it's very valuable in being patient with people, not being criticizing, but use soft speech, right? Because who knows, however times we might speak to someone later on down the road, who knows that it's not the 101st time that actually gets through to them. But if you on the 100th time get impatient and speak to them harshly, that 101st time will never come because they won't listen to you ever again. And I've seen it happen. And it's a tragedy that it happens that way. So it creates a very uncomfortable environment for the one who's trying to learn. And it does a great disservice in the idea of teaching to people. This brings to mind the incident in the Torah, in Bamidbar 20, verses 7 through 11, in the book of Numbers. It says, then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock and give drink to the congregation and their animals. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded, and Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said, hear now, you rebels, must we bring water out of this rock for you? Then Moses lifted his hand, struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animals drank. You see, Moses spoke very harshly to the people. He called them rebels. Listen here, you rebels. Do I have to do everything for you? Right? This incident was wrong on just about every level. Okay? But the aspect that I want to draw to your attention is the fact that God chastised Moses, because Moses was supposed to speak to the rock. He wasn't even supposed to speak to the people. He's supposed to speak to the rock. But he spoke to the people. Not only did he do what he wasn't supposed to do, he did it in a wrong manner. He basically accused the people of being rebellious, which they were. But was that Moses' place to say? No. He should have just done what the Lord told him to do. He learned a very crucial lesson that day through this incident. Do not speak harshly to people. It's not good on any level. If we think that somehow or another, because we say it louder, more angrily, more intensely, that somehow or they're going to get it. And I would be lying if I said that I'm not learning a lesson in all of this. Just to be absolutely transparent. Sometimes if I have to repeat myself more than one time, I get a little angry. Or not angry, I get a little irritated or a little frustrated because either, number one, they didn't hear me, or number two, they didn't understand. And I've had to fight that urge and learn to take that urge and push it down to say it louder and more forcefully. It's not that they didn't hear me, not that they just didn't understand it. And shoving it down their throat isn't going to help. So it's a growing message that I'm giving today, not just for everybody else out there, just me. God told me this, now I'm telling you what God is telling me, showing you what God shows me. So do not speak harshly to people. It's not good. Rabbi Nachman of Breslev, he said, even though chastisement is a lofty thing, and each Jew must chastise his neighbor when the latter acts awry, for it is written, you shall chastise your neighbor. Even so, not everyone is worthy of reprimanding others. Rabbi Akiva said, I'm surprised if there's anyone in this generation that's worthy of reprimanding others. And if you think about that statement for just a minute, Rabbi Akiva, lived in a time of spiritual giants. Rabbi Akiva was there at the destruction of the Second Temple. Many, many great rabbis that came out of the generation. Rabbi Gamliel, that we know from the New Testament, that Paul studied under, was a part of that. The Rashbi, which in the 33rd day of the Omer is dedicated to the Rashbi, is called Lag BaOmer. They celebrate his birth and death on the 33rd day of the Omer. He came out of that generation. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he came out of that generation of the Second Temple. So there was a lot of very spiritual giants during that time. And Rabbi Akiva said, it's doubtful that anybody in this generation actually has the spiritual level to reprimand anybody else. Now, if he said that, how much more so, or let me say this, how much less so later generations? Rabbi Nachman continues in Likutei Moharan. He says, a soul thrives from aroma. So when the person who chastises arouses the foul odor of his soul, that soul is debilitated and consequently cut off from the divine abundance. What does he mean? When you speak harshly to somebody, you arouse a foul odor with them. But when the person that chastises is worthy of reprimanding others, then his chastisement arouses the excellent aroma of that soul by means of teshuvah, by means of repentance. For one's chastisement must be on the level of Moses. It's an interesting comment to say that one's chastisement must be on the level of Moses after the incident of the rock. Moses learned a lesson that day. How you speak to somebody matters. And if a person feels like they can't listen to you, the speaking doesn't do any good. In a book titled Garden of Peace, Rabbi Shalom Arush states, to reprimand other people a person must be on the spiritual level of Moses. And if Rabbi Akiva said that no one in his lofty generation was qualified to reprove others, and Rebbe Nachman of Breslev said the same things about his generation that was filled with the spiritual giants, then we certainly can't make even the slightest remark to another person, especially to our own wives. Those who continue to remark and comment about others and criticize them are making a grave mistake. The Torah requires a person to reprimand his fellow man only if he doesn't do harm to that person. True chastisement is designed to release the burden of sin from a person's shoulders. The reprimands from an unworthy person can call attention to the burden of sin and make it even more unbearable. Absolutely incredible statement by Rabbi Shalom Arush. That the sin that a person is bearing could be made even heavier and worse if we approach the situation in the wrong way. And how we deal with them, how we speak with them, and how we approach. Again, I want to refer back to the word Emor, which means to tailor our message in such a way that they can hear it. Not because we have a message we have to give. You need to hear from me. No. I want you to hear what I have to say because it's important to your life. Most reprimands, they weaken people and they break hearts. That's what it does. One might even say to themselves, if I'm such a loser and everything that I do is so wrong, how can there ever be any hope for me? Right? If one is condemning and criticizing on a constant basis, the person who's listening to it gets to the point and say, am I ever going to do anything right? It breaks their heart. It destroys a person's will to want to improve or even become a better person because they don't know if they can. It causes one to fall into despair and hopelessness. It may even cause someone to fall away from Hashem. God forbid that it should ever happen. Sharp criticisms and snide backhand comments about someone's behavior, it only pushes them away further. So rather than helping others, the person who criticizes and comments does grave damage to the other person. So now let's talk about the real world here. We've studied the concept. We've listened to the concept. Now let's talk about where the rubber meets the road. Because, I don't like to do any teaching whatsoever unless we have some sort of practical application in our life. How do we apply this? How do we get past it? How do we make the necessary tikkun, the necessary repair? One at a time. That's how we do it. Again, the most intimate of all relationships is the husband-wife relationship. Would most of you agree that it's very easy to fall into a habit of commenting on one another's actions? You get very comfortable with one another, and you might be in the kitchen doing something, and one person might do something, and the other will look at him and say, what'd you do that for? Why'd you even do that? Right? And then the other one starts feeling like, well, now I got to justify my actions. And then you start saying, I don't do that. That's not how I do it. You're doing it all wrong, right? So it happens. It's very easy. Why? Because we're very comfortable with one another. We get into a place where we feel like whatever comment we want to make, and it happens in the most commonly in familial relationships, in the family. We're comfortable. We don't feel like we've got to guard our tongue. We don't feel like we have to guard our words anymore, our tone, or any of the way we approach it. But on the contrary, how much more so should it be within the context of husband-wife relationship? How much more so in the confines of a familial environment that we should guard how we approach and talk to one another? And it's most damaging in the husband-wife relationship because they spend the most time together. And we see each other's deficiencies and faults more than anybody else does. And therefore we think, you know what? God put me here so that I can correct you. That's why I'm here. You don't know how to do it right, so God put me on this planet right here just to fix you. So this is kind of some of our thinking. This is some of our rationale. But I will qualify that with saying that's true. That is true. That's why it's called the wife is called the Ezer Kenegdo. That's why she's called the helpmate. But if you notice, nowhere from the scriptures, from Genesis all the way to Revelation, does it ever call a man an Ezer Kenegdo. A man is not a helpmate. His wife is the helpmate. That should tell us one thing and one thing only. Men, you're not going to like that I say this, but it's true. The wife is the helpmate for the man. It's the man that needs the rectification. It's the man who needs help to meet his soul rectification. And if you haven't read my blog this week, I sent it out in an email. I sent it out on Facebook. I highly recommend reading this blog because I talk about that very thing. A man's rectification, his soul rectification, comes from his wife. So it's true. In one direction, a man needs to listen to what his wife has to say because she was put there to be his helper. Okay? So I've got a list of 8 things about comments we can all take to heart. Again, it's one thing to have your helpmate to tell you. It's another thing about how you deliver it. But it's also, how am I going to receive it? Do I need to get offended? No, I don't. So here it is. 8 things about comments that we can all take to heart. Number 1, comments are debilitating. When we make too many comments and we do it in a harsh way, it's very debilitating. 2, when you just make remarks, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. A remark such as, you need to slow down. You need to quit driving that way. You need to quit acting that way. Okay? Remarks don't help. Number 3, remarks are degrading. Okay? There's a difference between helping somebody versus just making comments and making remarks. Okay? This is a hard one. One who criticizes is arrogant. One who criticizes is arrogant. Why? Because I'm better than you. I know more than you. I'm greater than you. Therefore, I'm criticizing you for the way you do it. Remarks are damaging to a relationship. Makes it difficult for people to have a relationship when there's criticizing remarks and comments. Number 6, pedants can't teach. Those who deliver information on a level that is talking down to people, it's arrogant, it's criticizing, they can't teach people. Pirkei Avot tells us this. One who criticizes cannot teach. Number 7, remarks are dangerous. They're very dangerous because of the environment that it creates. And it does create a certain level of feelings within a person that if they sit under it for so long, they start having self-doubt. They start having self-esteem issues. And number 8, the remarks are a boomerang. Remarks are a boomerang. And this mostly applies from the husband to the wife. A wife is a mirror of her husband. However the husband acts is exactly how the wife is going to mirror. So if the husband is very critical, giving a lot of comments, then you can certainly be absolutely certain that the husband is making a lot of comments and remarks towards his wife. Whatever type of household you have is exactly the household you create. If I'm criticizing as I speak, guess what? Everybody in my household is going to be critical back to me. And this is how they're going to learn. So those are 8 things that we can learn about these comments. Now, I'm going to get off your toes for just a minute. Except for this. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger, as it says in Proverbs 15:1. Soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. You might ask yourself more and less, how is the other person supposed to improve and learn if I don't say something about what they're doing? If I don't tell them, they're not going to know. But let me ask you this question. I'm going to ask you a better question. Has any comment, remark, criticism ever produced the result that I've ever desired? Have I ever been impatient, sharply criticized my wife or my children, and it produced exactly what I was looking for? You know, with my children, it might have produced an obedience on the spot, but in the long run, what did it produce? It produced fear of me, produced a reluctance to want to talk to me, produced an environment in which most people try to run from and hide from. So the answer is, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Before someone speaks, one might think it best to provide guidance beforehand rather than criticism afterwards. If we want to learn how to overcome this critical spirit, this critical way of speaking to people, we might want to say, you know what, I know you're getting ready to go out and mow the lawn. Can I give you some tips on something that I've learned before you go do it? And then, you can take it however you want to. If you want to apply it, great. If you don't, you know a better way, that's great. But I've learned that if you get too close over there, then it's going to drop off and you're going to basically scalp the lawn. So, try to stay a little bit to the right side of that little ledge and then come back with a trimmer, and you can do it that way. And that way, when I go out there, or if I don't do it that way and I go out later and find out that the lawn's been scalped from one side to the other, then I come back and say, what are you doing? Why'd you do it that way? Blah, blah, blah. You see the difference? To provide guidance beforehand is much better than criticizing afterward. And if we feel the idea or feel the presence of inside of us, because you know what it is, it's that anxiety where that thing rises up to your throat and you're just like, am I going to say it? Oh, and then it comes flying off your tongue. That's why God put lips and teeth inside of our mouth as a gate, as a way to hold it back. So what we want to do is we want to bring a message in which people can actually hear. A wise one woman once said, you can correct me and be nice about it at the same time. You can give me constructive criticism, but you don't have to shout it at me. You don't have to be impatient with me while you're giving it to me. The delivery is of the utmost importance when we are talking and dealing with other people. There's never a reason, we say this emphatically, there is never a reason to ever be ugly to anyone at any time. There's never a reason for it. Never. Judaism has a rule that one should give at least 10 occurrences of affirmation and praise in relation to one criticism. It doesn't mean that you go, okay, I praised you 10 times today. Now I need to tell you what you're doing wrong because I've got that one loaded in the shotgun. No. It's to develop a habit of always looking for the good in somebody. To always let people know what you appreciate about them than it is to tell them what's wrong with them. Because a habit, again, of telling somebody what's wrong with them all the time starts making a person feel like, what is wrong with me? But be encouraged to know that there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. It's the person who's doing it. So Parashat Emor teaches us that one should be sensitive to the one of whom we speak. All right, getting off your toes. Leviticus 22:7. Let's skip ahead to the next chapter. Verse 7, Leviticus 22:7. It says, and when the sun goes down, he shall be clean, and afterward he may eat the holy offerings, because it is his food. So this is still in the context of the priesthood. And this is about him becoming either clean or unclean. And this affects a priest as to whether or not he can serve within the Beit HaMikdash, within the temple, doing his job. And so the priest, he's not to eat the terumah, the offering, when he's in a state of tameh, tahor, in a state of tahor, in a state of impurity. He must purify himself before eating the terumah. In Hebrew, you see the verse says, uvo hashemesh taher ve'echar. This word that I have highlighted on the screen for you, achar, is translated as afterward in the New King James Version, but it can also mean something else. As such as Genesis 4:25, we see the same word, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth, for God has appointed achar, another seed for me, instead of Abel, whom Cain killed. So what is the significance then of translating this word achar not as afterward, but as another? We read it, and when the sun goes down, he shall be clean, and another may eat the holy offerings. It reads that way. And when the sun goes down, he shall be clean, and another may eat the holy offerings because it is his food. The implication is that once one is purified, once they go down into the waters, they do the mikvah, they're purified, they come back up, guess what? They become echar, another person, not the same person that they were before. And I am fighting the urge to quote one of the funniest movies I think I've ever seen, and that was Master of Disguise with Dana Carvey. He's a person who changes into other people. His family was gifted with the gift of changing disguises, to put on different disguises and become another person. And so Dana Carvey's learning how to become another person from his grandfather, and he's becoming an Indian Swami. And he says, I'm becoming another person, becoming another person, becoming another person. I'm becoming another person. Oh, look, it's a little snake. Right? So he uses his accent. So every time I say another person, I just have to say, becoming another person. Okay? Anyway, a person who goes down into the mikvah, into the waters of immersion, when they come back up, they become achar. They become another person. In Hilchot Teshuvah, the Rambam says, I am a different person. I am no longer the person who committed the sin. So one who comes out of the fires of purification, or the ones who come up out of the waters of the mikvah, they would be considered a different person. They're not the same person who went down into the waters before they came back up. And that is the symbolism of the immersion. That's the symbolism of being baptized. Something has been washed off of me, and I'm not the same anymore. This does not mean that I came out of the waters perfect, and now I'm sinless, and I'm rectified of all of my character deficiencies. But whenever one goes through a trial or a tribulation, there's a purpose for it. We don't go through things in life for absolutely no reason. There is a purpose in everything that God allows us to go through, and it's for the purpose of purification. Okay? The whole purpose of judgment and justice is a process of purification. When one goes to jail, it's supposed to be a purification. It's supposed to change their behavior. It's supposed to change who they are and what they did, and to think about the consequences of what they're doing. It is to teach us lessons, help the person change something that needs to be changed. We go through difficulties in life. We have issues that we need to learn from. I read something somewhere this week that there's no suffering without prior sin. So there's something latent within us that God wants us to get out. And it could be something that we think, or something that is hidden or concealed within our personality that we're not even aware of. For years, there was something hidden and latent in my personality that I didn't see, didn't know it was there. It was just how I had learned how to operate. This is how I approach situations. This is how I did life, because maybe circumstances earlier in life, and I developed this way of dealing with things. But then it was there, and I was completely unaware of it until I got into a situation in which this entire thing that was innate within me, that was hiding, became exposed. And once it became exposed, I had to deal with it. I had to figure out what this has been running in the background for all of my life, and now I got to learn how to deal with it. And so everything that we go through, God's trying to show us something. He's trying to show us, to reveal something for us so that we can change it. And these situations that we find ourselves, as James tells us in James chapter 1, that let perseverance have its perfect work. Right? All the trials and the tribulations create in us perseverance. And through this perseverance, we need to learn what it is so that we do some soul searching and uncover the reason and make the necessary rectification. Rambam, again in his work called Hilchot Teshuvah 2:2, states this: what constitutes teshuvah? That a sinner should abandon his sins and remove them from his thoughts, resolving in his heart never to commit them again, as Isaiah 55:7 states, may the wicked abandon his ways. Similarly, he must regret the past, as Jeremiah 31:18 states, after I returned, I regretted. Okay? After I returned, I regretted. He must reach the level where he who knows the hidden will testify concerning him that he will never return to this sin again, as Hosea 14:4 states, we will no longer say to the work of our hands, you are our gods. So the Rambam makes a very interesting point in this writing. It says, he who knows the hidden will testify concerning him. What does it mean that Hashem will testify concerning the person? Inasmuch as a person at all times has free will, and they are able to do good and evil, and God does not control a person's moral behavior, how is it possible that God will testify to that the person will never commit the sin again? Right? He says, you haven't done real teshuvah until God testifies and says, you're done with it. How is it that God can do that? Because we know that there is a person, or as a person, we always have free will. We always have the ability to choose to either do good or evil. Let's look at King Solomon, for example. He started out wanting to have the wisdom of God. He started out wanting to do what is right and good. He built the house for God to dwell in. And later on in his life, he turned away from God. All his foreign wives changed his heart, and he turned away from God because of foreign women. So it cannot be said with certainty of anyone that he will never sin again. However, the Ramban says God will testify that you in fact have turned away from that sin. So I want to quote Rabbi Abraham Twersky. He states this: given a person's level of spirituality, there are some things that he's simply incapable of doing. For example, imagine a devoted Torah scholar who rises at dawn to study Torah, immerse in a mikveh, prays for 2 hours with great kavanah, and follows this with Torah study. This person is not going to stop at the first fast food chain for a cheeseburger, right? He's talking about mixing milk and dairy. The possibility of his eating terefa, or eating food that is forbidden, it's not within reality. However, it is conceivable that someone may tell him something about another person that is Lashon Hara, and that he may listen to it. Listening to Lashon Hara is as grievous a sin as speaking it. How is it that although it is impossible for him to eat trefa, forbidden food, it is possible that he may listen to Lashon Hara? The answer is that although he is at this level of spirituality that makes eating trefa an impossibility, he does not have the degree of spirituality that would make listening to Lashon Hara impossible as eating trefa. When one becomes aware of having committed a sin by engaging in Lashon Hara, it is crucial to genuinely regret it and make a commitment to avoid participating in Lashon Hara in the future. Rambam emphasizes that simply resolving to refrain from specific actions is insufficient. It is necessary to actively work towards elevating one's spiritual level to the extent that engaging in Lashon Hara becomes as unthinkable as consuming trefa. This inner transformation will result in a fundamental shift in character, rendering the individual unrecognizable from the person who previously engaged in Lashon Hara. So he tells us, he gives us the answer. You might be at this level here. He said, but God has an expectation we move to the next level. And then from level to level to level. In Hebrew, it's called madrega to madrega, from one spiritual level to another. We might have overcome this one particular sin. I won't put another piece of pork or bacon in my mouth the rest of my life, unless it's beef bacon or turkey bacon. And I've reached that level. But there's other levels that God's trying to remove from us. And they're going to get harder and harder and harder. Right? Abraham went through 10 tests. And the final test that Abraham had to go through was binding of Yitzhak. Binding Isaac to the altar. So God brings us from level to level. He puts us in situations to grow us and to bring us to where he needs us to be. So the key is to do what it takes to avoid the same mistake. That's what he's telling us. It's not just enough to decide in your heart that you don't want to do it. We often say, I need to lose weight. I probably need to clean out that back bedroom more. I probably need to get more organized. You know what we've done? We've left ourselves an out. We've left ourselves an escape hatch. I need to do it. That's a lot different than saying, I'm going to do it. Because once you say, I'm going to do something, then you have the obligation to do it, because if you don't do it, that makes you a liar, right? We don't want to be known as a liar. So when it comes to eradicating sin in our lives and affecting a teshuvah to the point where God will testify on our behalf and say it'll never happen, is when we actually make not only the commitment to do it, but then we do it. And then God says, you have overcome. Matthew 5:27 through 30. You heard it said that those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out, cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. Do you think Yeshua was serious about what he said? Was it metaphorical language? I believe it was metaphorical. But he brought a very strong point. You do what you got to do in order to stop the sin that you're committing. He said, you do what you got to do. If you got a problem with your eyes, pluck your eyes out. Metaphorically, that means gain control over the members of your body. If you have a problem with your hand, touching, stealing, whatever, he said, cut your hand off. Do what you got to do. Put your hands in your pocket. Do what you got to do. Hold your wife's hand. Whatever you have to do. This is the same concept that Rabbi Abraham Twersky was talking about. You make the necessary adjustments. And when you make the necessary adjustments and you no longer, just like, walking down the sidewalk, falling into the hole. Eventually, you got to learn that the hole's there and learn how to walk around it. And therefore, God will testify on your behalf. So teshuvah is complete when a person reaches this level of spirituality. And this is what the Rambam meant, that God would testify to. He would testify to the fact that a person reached a level where he now overcomes sin. We also see this in 1 John, where Yochanan talks about young men, fathers, and the older men. This is a progression. The young men overcome this, but the older men overcome this, to where the old men have basically overcome Satan altogether. And so he talks about this progression. The man may sin again, but that is a matter of free choice. The man may sin again, but that's a matter of free choice if he does it after he's already reached a level of doing it. And that's a whole different issue in and of itself. As long as the man maintains that level of spirituality, he has the ability to overcome whatever temptation is put in front of it. In Messiah Yeshua, we've been given all things, given everything necessary to overcome sin. It's just a matter of exercising that spiritual muscle. Or are we going to let that spiritual muscle atrophy? This is what the Torah means when it says, another may eat the food. When one comes up out of the waters, whenever one who is purified comes up out of the waters, he's a different person. This is not just applicable to the Cohen. Every person who regrets a misdeed should seek to enhance their spirituality to the point where it is inappropriate acts are no longer possible. That we no longer have the desire or the will, or even if necessary, the means to commit it any longer. So having said that, let's stand for the Birkat HaKohanim. If someone could grab my talit off the tzedakah box, I would be very grateful and thankful for that. I know this was kind of a hard message today. It was kind of a growing message, to get to the point where we're moving forward. Not every message can just be happy, yay, yay, I feel good, and go home and, dance and skip out the door. But having said that, just know I love you. Because I'm not talking to just you guys. These are lessons that God has taught me in the past, and he continues to teach me on a regular basis. So you're just basically getting a bird's eye view of what it is that God's looking into my life. He's giving you a little porthole to look into my life to see, whatever it is I'm up here talking about, it's either God has dealt with me about it or he's continuing to deal with me about it. So don't feel bad. I'm not up here just throwing stones. Yevorechacha Adonai ve'yishmarecha Ya'el Adonai panav elecha ichunecha Yisa Adonai panav alecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. B'Shem Sar Shalom, Yeshua Mashiachenu. In the name of our Prince of Peace, Yeshua, our Messiah. And Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.